Guys, welcome in the 2023 Qatar Grand Prix around the Lusail circuit is this weekend, and we are here to make our official predictions for the Qatar Grand Prix. I'm excited to see it. It's going to be the first time I get to see a Qatar Grand Prix around Lusail since I started following Formula One in the 2022 season, and so I'm excited to see it. But that also comes with the fact that I really don't know what this circuit is going to happen and what it's going to look like. Apparently, the last time that this was run, Lewis won in the W12. I want to say, and apparently it looks pretty good at doing it. Playing it on the F123 game makes me think that it's very, medium to high speed circuit with a lot of cornering and very, very harsh on the tires. But with that said, with that knowledge and that limited knowledge at that, we're going to go ahead and move in and make our predictions for our Qatar And so with that said, we're going to go ahead and move in to our predictions for the Qatar Grand Prix. We have our predictions for biggest positive surprise, biggest disappointment, our qualifying top three. And since it is a sprint weekend, we are also doing one for our sprint winner, our race podium, and then finally our Haas prediction of the race weekend. And then at the end, I'd like to give my community an opportunity to make their predictions as well. And so we'll go down theirs as well at that point, and we'll get it all figured out. But let's go ahead, let's jump into it with our biggest positive surprise. My prediction for biggest positive surprise this weekend is going to be Nico Hülkenberg. I think I did that right. Daniel Ricciardo, please, I know you're watching. Go ahead, leave a comment down below and tell me how that was. But I went for Nico for a bit of a different reason. I think as the season is starting to wrap up, obviously Max could win the world title this weekend after Red Bull's already secured the constructors title. And so I'm going to start doing something a little differently with these predictions, or at least these kinds of predictions, the biggest positive surprise, biggest disappointment. And so I'm actually going with a Nico Hülkenberg pick for biggest positive surprise, because after a rough couple of rounds in a row of being beaten by Kevin in qualifying and just really generally bad luck, I think Nico is going to come out and be a little fired up and hopefully put in a good solid performance as we wind down this season. And so I think Nico has an opportunity to kind of re-emerge and put together a solid weekend for a Haas car that probably isn't going to do too well in the grand scheme of things, but I'm excited to see, and hopefully Nico can come out and have a bit of a successful weekend in his own right. So Nico, you are my pick for biggest positive surprise. Then moving on to our next prediction, we have biggest disappointment. And for this one, I think this is not necessarily going to be a big shocker, but I have gone for Aston Martin. Aston Martin is pretty, not necessarily famously, but infamously been marching slowly backwards as the season has gone on. Obviously, as the season started, they came out on fire. Fernando Alonso, multiple podiums in a row in an Aston Martin that wasn't particularly competitive last season. And so, but as the season has gone on and other teams have sort of brought upgrades and iterated and continued to develop the car, Aston Martin just for some reason really just didn't seem to gel with their upgrade packages, and they're slowly sliding down the order. And you add in the fact that such a high and medium speed circuit like Lusail, I don't know that it's going to go particularly well. And I don't even know if Fernando can, really work his magic enough to make it happen. That's not to say Fernando might not get points, but I think it might be a very, very disappointing weekend for Aston Martin. Moving on to my qualifying predictions, we like to do our top three, and since it is a sprint weekend, we'll point out that this is for the full Grand Prix on Sunday, so this is the results of qualifying on Friday. Starting at P3, I have gone for Charles Leclerc. I think it's been a little bit of time since we've seen a truly remarkable result in qualifying from Charles. Carlos obviously has been performing very, very well in the Ferrari recently. And while Charles hasn't necessarily been doing poorly, it's definitely been a minute since we've seen a Charles Leclerc qualifying masterclass. And for whatever reason, it always seems like he comes alive in sprint weekends. And so that's why I put him here in P3. Now, moving up to the front row, I have chosen Lando Norris as my choice for P2. In qualifying, I mean, the McLaren has looked night and day different from the beginning of the season. Sort of the antithesis to the Aston Martin problem. McLaren came into the year with an absolute dog of a car. And at this point now, it's almost more shocking that they aren't battling for podiums than they are not. And so I have gone for Lando Norris. He's been driving absolutely beautifully down the stretch in the last few rounds in particular. And well, I know that Oscar just got his first podium in F1 with a circuit like this that features a lot of high deg, supposedly. We saw around Japan that was sort of a similar situation that Oscar really struggled to control the tire degradation and saving his tires. And I think Lando will be just enough in this one to come home in P2 in qualifying. And then my pick for pole position. Pole position, I have gone for Max. I mean, it's Max Verstappen. I mean, I think he's going to want to come out and make an absolute statement this weekend. And so, Max, congratulations already for your pole position. Go ahead, win that championship, and go ahead, just check out for a little bit, huh? We're going to roll straight into sprint winner. We're going to keep this one also nice and short. Max Verstappen. I think he's going to take pole again in the sprint shootout, and I don't see anyone or anything really being able to stand in his way. He's been driving like an absolute maniac this year, and it's hard for me to pick anyone else at this point. So Max, congrats. You are going to win the sprint and by de facto win the world championship by doing so. So maybe try and win, the world championship in a normal way next year, huh? And then finally, in terms of race results, we have my predictions for the race podium. Now this one, I think it went entirely on vibes, and I'm going to start top down just because my vibes pick is my choice for P3. I have Max Verstappen winning the Qatar Grand Prix. Again, I don't know this really needs to be said much more. He's been driving unreal. I think it's just pretty much inevitable at this point. For P2, I have Lando Norris coming home P2. I think starting on the front row will give him an opportunity to kind of break away and control his own race once Max kind of gets away. And I think he'll do enough. And he's proven more than enough recently that he's been able to, make it happen. And I think he does it and finishes P2. And then for P3, I think a guy who probably isn't being talked about enough for how good of a season he's actually having. It's just in comparison to the Red Bull, nothing is going to look as impressive. My choice for P3 and rounding out the podium, I have gone for Lewis Hamilton. Lewis won I believe the inaugural Qatar Grand Prix. It's only been held once, at least recently. That if I'm remembering correctly, someone, if I'm wrong, let me know down in the comments below. But I think Lewis is going to want to come out and have a good result around Qatar and Losail, and so I think Lewis is going to been driving absolutely very well in a Mercedes that just isn't on quite the pace as definitely not the Red Bull, and maybe not even as much as the McLaren, or at least not as consistent as the McLaren has been the last few rounds. But I think Lewis rounds out the race podium. And those are my picks. Only one prediction left. It's the Haas podium. Let's go ahead and just roll right into it. I mentioned it at the top. Biggest positive surprise, Nico Hülkenberg. In doing that, I think one car makes it into Q2. Probably Nico, if I'm being honest. Not much more than that. This is a very high tire deg circuit, and I just don't see the Haas performing very well here. It's a power circuit. It's a tire circuit. Two things that the Haas has just not been the most best at. So one car into Q2, and I think that'll be a pretty solid result. Anything more than that is gravy. And then my final prediction for Haas is 2 cars in the top 15. Definitely, probably not points. But I don't know. There's a weird feeling in the air around Haas this weekend where I feel like there's so many eyes everywhere else that Haas just might have a sneaky good result here in Qatar when no one is really expecting it. But that is my predictions for the Qatar Grand Prix. Let's go ahead. Let's jump into my community's predictions. And we'll start once again with biggest positive surprise. They have gone for one, Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki has been, I think, chasing Liam Lawson a little bit. And I think Yuki is definitely a solid choice to have a good weekend in an AlphaTauri that has proved to be a little better maybe than it once was, and so I would love to see Yuki come in and have a good, strong weekend. But we have an antithesis. Someone else chose Liam Lawson. It could be a battle of the AlphaTauris here this weekend, if you're to believe my community. So I, for one, am totally down to watch more side-by-side AlphaTauri action in Qatar. So we'll have to wait and see. Going on to biggest disappointment, we have another choice for Aston Martin. I just don't think Aston Martin is going to perform very well here, and it seems to be not an uncommon theme for sure. Moving on from there to our other choice for biggest disappointment, we have Mercedes. They left a note that just says entirely no explanation, just vibes. So we'll leave it at that as well. Looking at the qualifying top three, again, Grand Prix qualifying, not the sprint qualifying. We have a double pick of Max taking pole position. Again, nothing too surprising there. For one, we have a Sergio Perez P2, which I think at this point would actually maybe qualify more as biggest positive surprise than anything. On the other end, we have a choice of Charles Leclerc. I think we're all expecting Charles to kind of take a step forward this weekend, considering it is a sprint weekend. And then rounding out their qualifying top three, we have both of them choosing Lando Norris. And then sprint winner, again, rolling right through this one, sprint winner, Max Verstappen. Pretty straightforward at this point, if we're being honest. And then for our race podium, they have both chosen a Max Verstappen win. Our first guy has chosen Sergio Perez P2 and a Lando Norris P3. And then our other one as a Max win, Lando Norris P2 and a Charles Leclerc P3. I think we could see a lot of expectations going on Charles' shoulder this weekend. Hopefully he can pull it out. And finally, their predictions for Haas this weekend. Obviously, they are not as big a fan of Haas as I am, and so they predict one predicts a 14th to double 14th to 16th, which is not too far off from one of my predictions. Just saying. And another, we actually have a strong prediction coming. They think that they're going to be competitive in the lower midfield. Maybe a double Q2 appearance. Maybe a battle for points. If that happens, I am going to be over the moon, and I am totally down for it. But that wraps it up, actually. That is our final prediction from our community here at the channel. And if you want to get involved, go ahead, hit the Discord link down below. That's where we post every race weekend on the lead up to it, asking for your input and what you think is going to happen. So if you want to get involved, go ahead, hit that down below. And if you let me know what your predictions are, even here, leave a comment down below with what you think is going to happen this weekend around Losail in Qatar. And as always, if you enjoy Formula One content, both video game or on in real life, go ahead, hit that red subscribe button down below, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload. We've been having a lot of fun here, and I'm excited to keep bringing this content to you. But that'll wrap it up for me here. Well, after the weekend is over, watch this space for our normal post-weekend recap video where we'll talk about all the things that happened during the race, any major things that happened over the weekend, and of course, what happened and who came out on top and who might have had a weekend to forget. But until then, enjoy the race weekend, stay safe, I appreciate you all, and until then, I'll see you guys in the next one.